Sup guys, we're here for the Yugioh Council. You may hear an echo. We're not in the typical room that we use for recording, which is a reptile room, because there's a bunch of crickets in the tanks and they're chirping. Trust me, you don't want to hear it. Anyways, you guys clicked on this video for the top 10 decks and needed support, so I'm going to bring it to you. We went over this topic once on Coffee Time. So if you feel like I left anything out, we could have been talking about it then. But I wanted to isolate 10 decks that honestly, truly need the love. They need to get out there more. They need more oomph. They're not good enough right now, and these are probably the 10 decks that could use priority 1, overhaul instead of giving it to things that really don't. With that said, let's get into this list. Number 10, Gladiator Beasts. If the anime is anything to go by, or the recent Ancient Gears, support's coming for them. But it's not enough. I can tell you that much. Konami's probably just going to throw him a new fusion and tell him we'll see you in 2 to 3 years. And that's really not what the deck needs. This is a fantastic deck that has everything going for it. But because there's so many cards that say, you can't target me, it makes it harder and harder for the deck to jump over basic little things. And you have to use stuff like Moon Mirror Shield, which you can't search out of the deck and equip. A themed Moon Mirror Shield would be a lovely card for the deck to have, so that way they can attack over things. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, the idea of that, because then they'd be able to attack over anything, but again, there's plenty of side cards to really, if they ever got to that point, they needed it, to really worry about it, but a new fusion and just something along those lines, a spell card that could be searchable, and you could bring it out and recycle it, that would be great for the deck. That honestly would. Not a Miller, not some, overpowered card. Just something basic. They have a War Chariot. They don't need another Solemn. They have the Solemn Strikes. So our number 10 is going to be Gladiator Beasts. Moving on to number 9, Hunters. This is a deck that only has basically 3 monsters that are themed archetype. Now you could say, hey, Thunder Seahorse works great with them. But what about a bro Hun? What about grandma Hun? What about dad Hun? Okay, there's a dad Hun. Pop Hun. Pop Thunder. They're the Thunder family in OCG, and the TCG name changed them to Hunter. Ugh. What they could use is pretty simple. Something to speed up the deck, maybe some draw power, some extra deck thinning, and like I said, another monster that can normal summon itself for more rank 4 spam. Because that's what the deck does perfectly, and still does pretty okay. The starter Spark Dragon thing that boosted itself to 3,000 using the Vylon Prison to the Synchro Wit, that's a pretty cool combo, but it's too slow. It's outdated. A lot of these decks are just too slow and outdated, and Hunters are one of those things I just really want to see get support. Moving along the list, number 8, Worms. I know what you're going to say. Ryu, there's Prediction Princess. They can use that. But that's not fair to the people who played Worms. This was regarded as a regional topping deck at one point, if I'm not mistaken. They actually had pretty much everything they need. The only thing is, again, they're really slow, even with the Prediction Princess stuff. And at the same time, they lack a lot of power that these newer, more hip decks actually have. They don't have the combos those decks do. They don't have the incentive to push is hard. And this is something that could be overhauled and get people behind it. It's part of the DT storyline, and from what I'm looking from the Shadow side of the support, that they're going back to those DTs and updating it for certain archetypes. Worms would be a perfect thing to bring back. A perfect thing to overhaul. Well, that and Alloy of Justice. But Worms are going to be my number 8 pick because they really, really do need it. My number 7, and I'm going to be talking about this one probably extensively, is Red Eyes. The deck right now, all it really does is dump a bunch of monsters to the graveyard, special them to board, make rank 7. There's the fusion, but it's lackluster. There's so much that Blue Eyes and Dark Magician do right, where one is super powerful, one's not quite there yet, and then you have Red Eyes, which is pretty much left in the dust and is sitting collecting dust because no one really seriously plays it because there's not a full-on competitive way. And yes, the Felgrand deck did help it to some degree, but again, all of the current Red Eyes support has all these limits built in to the speed and how you play the deck, and you gotta work it this way. You can only normal summon this one turn from this spell card. You can't summon anything else if you've used the fusion card. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, come on, you have a card that's like a Shaddoll fusion, but you can't normal summon or special summon afterwards, but Shaddolls have basically 3 different variants of that card, and you can't give Red Eyes even one? Like, I just don't get it. They gave them a new fusion. They gave them a search power card that searches out the spells and traps. Okay, that's decent enough, giving them another Dragon Shrine, pretty much to put Red Eyes into the graveyard, maybe make some level 8 Synchros and rank 7s. That's a pretty okay idea. But again, I'm itching to see Red Eyes become a decent quality tier 3 deck. Not tier 2, not tier 1, not tier 0. At least a tier 3. Joey Wheeler would be crying his eyes out right now that Red Eyes does not get nearly the love that Blue Eyes has. And yeah, I know what people are going to say, oh my god, Red Eyes were so good until they gave Blue Eyes new support. Red Eyes was okay. We knew it was going to be outclassed pretty soon, but it just needs something directly for it, and I don't even know what it needs, but it needs something to help it, because it's terrible right now. It really is. My number 6 spot is something that could basically OTK you if it sets up, but it's too easy to jump over, which is Gusto. They're a fun deck that floats. They're kind of like Raydell, where when they die, you're going to be able to trigger an effect. So triggered. You're going to be able to go your next monster. You're going to be able to make a synchro. A level 6 synchro that says this card cannot be destroyed by battle and everything, but then of course gotta sell means it's kind of balanced. The whole problem with Gustos is they lack a lot of speed and they get punished pretty hard. They don't have hand advantage, they don't have, draw power, and at worst, and I know some people are gonna hate me for saying this one, they're a win deck. They have Win-sitis. Now, Speedroids, and I guess I want to say Dragoonies, are pretty much the exception to Win-itis. Win-itis basically means if you're a win deck and Konami doesn't look at you, you don't get love, you don't get supported. You're the ugly child that Konami wants nothing to do with. That's how it honestly feels. And you're going to sit in the corner and rot. They have some cool combos, but the recent limitation of emergency teleport, which does hurt the Panaka, I think it's Panaka play, no, Pika play. They focus on Psychics and Wing Beasts. Basically, they're Ritual Beasts. Before Ritual Beasts were a thing, look at the artwork, you'll see what I mean, to some degree. It disappoints me because they really do have a lot of cool combos, but a lot of those just got shitted on with the limitation of Vitelli. So it's one deck I definitely want to see more play. I'll let you get more support. My number 5 pick is something that, honestly, I haven't said on the channel, but it's one of my old favorites from the DT era, which is Fabled. Fabled are a synchro deck that does not work like Synchrons. I don't want them to work that way. They kind of work like if you took Dark Worlds and regardless how they were discarded, they trigger, that is Fabled. And it's beautiful because they have tuners. They're a lot weaker than Dark Worlds, but you're building plays. You could play handless and then go Fable Virgin with Hyper Librarian on the board and pick up 3 cards and then make a Coral Dragon and discard 1, which will trigger another Fable effect, and then go Stardust Warrior and pick up 3 more. There's a lot of fun things you can do with the deck that don't even resolve with Level Eater. Well, obviously one does because you need a Level Eater to get to that Stardust Warrior combo wombo with the Coral Dragon, but I digress. Fables are something that have a cool concept for a synchro deck that's unique. You want people to play some synchros? Show them Fables. They're not super easy to play right now. They're not a bad deck at all, but I would like to see them get a few more cards. Maybe a draw power card that would trigger off their effects. Nothing too broken. Something that says you can't attack this turn, but you can you can only activate 1 per turn. Don't put both in there because then you're going to have the Red Eye Syndrome, which then the deck is held back too much, and you won't be able to have any real progression with the deck. You won't be able to push it out there. It won't become a better deck, and you don't want that at all. You want the deck to succeed to some degree. So, number 5 pick, Fabled. Number 4 pick is another something that I am really a fan of, but I never really got to mess around with, and I may do something with them shortly. I'm not quite sure. Hazy Flame. If there was a true to form deck that focused like Heretics, all tributing, but weren't as good, it's Hazy Flame. It sucks though. They're a fire archetype, which again, one of those kind of under-supported attributes that doesn't get enough love. And there's a few things you can do, but they're so heavy on their normal summons, and it's not like you could throw in the Gem Knight engine and say, hey, this works because I get an additional normal summon. Because the thing is, the deck doesn't focus on lights, it focuses on fire types. And that's the biggest problem with the deck right now. You can't get it to fully function coherently when you sit there and you're like, okay, how do I get this to work when I'm losing so much advantage and I can't, you could say, okay, there's Max C and you and your opponent can both play it, therefore it's okay, but that's not a situation that's arguable because the problem is that there's so many other draw power cards that this deck cannot really use and abuse. It's going to get outpaced. So definitely need something for more speed and something to help the overall style of it. My number 3 pick, Amazons. Really cool archetype, especially, I said this in the Coffee Time video, especially with Wonder Woman coming out next year. There's really not a better time to capitalize on reinvigorating Amazons with like 5 new monsters that would not break the deck, but get people behind the deck that want to play it. And I'm going to make the example of Cosmos. Cosmos are pretty much, how about I say Alice in Wonderland, the Wizard of Oz with Star Wars combined. And Konami released the majority of that support when we were all hyped about Star Wars because of Episode 7. So they knew what they were doing. So what I'm suggesting here is that they do the same again. It's a perfect time to give an old deck some love that focuses on doing battle, like a freaking warp battle with your opponent. Imagine you had an Amazon that could special an Amazon from the deck if that Amazon battles. And then that Amazon would gain 1,000 attack points because most of them are pretty weak. Allowing you to easily jump over stuff, but you have to enter battle phase. Meaning that if this deck ever became a problem, stuff like Quaking Mirror Force, or Drowning Mirror Force, or I don't know the TCG name, I think it's Storming Mirror Force, Air Force would bounce, or put everything face down, or just return everything. So there's plenty of ways to counter that, but I just like the idea of seeing the Amazons get support. My number 2, Fortune Ladies. This is a deck that I cannot speak highly enough about getting support. It is a deck that coherently does not function properly. You can say, hey look, I can get the deck to work. Everyone wants to see the deck work. It has 6 attributes. And the biggest problem that comes down to is, how do you give it support further? You can't just give them a Gold Sark card, because there's Gold Sark. But they need something that is not only going to speed up the deck, but allow them to get their levels faster. So what I will recommend, if they were to get support tomorrow, is some kind of card that pretty much speeds up their effects. Kind of like a timer effect. Because they have to be banished 1 turn, they gain a star. Want to have it where whenever one of your Fortune Ladies are banished, they'll gain 2 stars or 3 stars, whatever, 3 levels to boost off those effects, to trigger off those effects. I think that would be an interesting way. I would say 2, so that way it's not like, oh my god, but it gives them playability. My number 1 pick is probably the one deck that, honest to God, needs the support more than anything. Alloy of Justice. When I first saw these guys in the first hand arsenal, I got super excited. I'm like, this is a cool deck. And I started reading it. I'm like, the only use this has is to go against a light deck. So if I'm playing against Blue Eyes, this deck is super effective. That's all it is. And that's what sucks. It has a Lure of Darkness, so we're okay on speed. But they need power. They need a field card that makes everything a light monster. So that way their effects would trigger. Everything in hand or grave, or actually grave or field would become a light monster. that would instantly bring the deck up just about 5 freaking stages and allow you to just go and run with it and be able to play with it. Right now, as it stands, they're not even that playable because the best thing you could do is go against a light deck and hope to God you don't get KO'd. But that's going to be it for tonight. I just want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in as always. Guide to Your Site should be recorded in the other room. And I got a surprise for you on Monday's coffee time. I'm ready for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Council. If you enjoyed the video and you're brand new, make sure to subscribe for more, and I'll see you later. Peace.